Hello, my name is Dennis, and welcome to my trailer park white trash mobile home kitchen. I really do live in a mobile home, in a trailer park, and this is my kitchen.
I'm going to fulfill another request today that came in through my website. Chicken and dumplings. I grew up with chicken and dumplings. My mom made chicken and dumplings, but not the good old-fashioned southern kind. She was Italian American. And I'm a bit hesitant about doing this recipe because dumplings describe so many different things. I mean, I have Chinese dumplings in my recipe archive on my website. Those are pot stickers, but they're called dumplings. I've seen recipes, videos on YouTube where people make like a pasta dough, kind of a heavy, dry, almost dry dough, and they roll it really thin, cut it into squares or rectangles, and boil those in the stock. That to me is chicken and noodles. There are so many different things that are called dumplings. My mom's dumplings were like little, maybe they were the size of your fist, and they were like bread. She made them and cooked them in the broth. So that's what I want to do today, but I want to make some improvements upon my mom's recipe. However, first we're going to discuss the ingredients, then we're going to go back in time because last night I cooked the chicken to prepare it for today's recipe. For my chicken, I have here one 5.5 pound chicken, that's about 2.5 kilograms. And then I'm going to be using 2 cups, which is about 475 milliliters of my homemade chicken stock. This is my homemade chicken stock that I freeze in these 1 block cups. So I always have chicken stock in the freezer. If you don't have homemade chicken stock, you can buy the broth they sell in the store. Buy the low sodium one so that you can control the amount of salt going into your food. Now for the dumplings, I'm going to be using 1 large egg, 1 cup, which is about 237 milliliters of buttermilk, 3 tablespoons of butter, 1 cup or 5 ounces, 142 grams of all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon salt, optionally some freshly ground black pepper. I'm going to use some, but I'm going to go very light on the pepper because pepper seems to overcome the flavor of chicken so easily. And then finally I have 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm not using baking powder for this because there's acid in the buttermilk. Baking powder has acid when it's needed for leavening in a mixture such as making quick breads, but because I have acid here, I only need baking soda, which has no acid in it. So those are the ingredients that I'm using. As I mentioned, or as I plan to mention in the introduction when I start this video actually tomorrow, this is the evening before, and I'm going to be cooking my chicken using some of my homemade chicken stock, which is frozen. So my first step here is to get my stock into my pressure cooker, get this onto the heat, and start melting my stock. While this is melting, I'm going to cut up my chicken. Here's my chicken, the neck, the giblets, everything but the liver. I'm not going to put the liver inside my stock. Okay, everything else can go inside the stock. It's just going to add flavor to the stock. And speaking of flavor, you noticed I didn't put any vegetables in that liquid. Normally when you make chicken like this, chicken and dumplings, you put water in the pan, you add vegetables, and then your chicken. Between the vegetables and the chicken, that'll flavor the water so that you end up with stock. I'm already starting with a chicken stock that I made from scratch with chicken trim, a mirepoix of onion, celery, carrot, some herbs like bay leaves. So I already have a flavored stock. I don't need vegetables in my stock now. What I do want to do now is I want to section my chicken. So if you've seen my video and my procedure for deboning chicken, I'm pretty much going to do the same thing, but I'm just not going to debone everything. So there's one of my chicken wings. Same thing on this side. There's my 2 wings. I'm going to put those in my bowl. I'm going to take the legs off, same way that I would if I were going to be deboning this chicken. I'm going to leave the skin on because all of that adds flavor to the broth that'll be in the bottom of the pan. If you see something black like that, that's just an artery that still has whole blood in it. You can take that out. They do bleed chickens properly by law. This is I just bought this at the store, so there's still ice in it. I knew this was going to be fresh. They had just put these out at the warehouse store. So there I am, I'm sectioning my drumstick from my thigh, leaving the skin on, the bone in. Put that in my bowl. Same thing on this side. Cut down through the skin. Go all the way down to the bottom. Split this along the joint. And then just cut through that joint. And there goes a train. Yes, I live near the tracks. I didn't mention it, but there's a joint right here. You can feel it with your fingers. It's where the bone, the thigh bone, and the drumstick bone meet. You can feel it and just cut right down through it. It's really simple. That's the softest part, and therefore the easiest part to cut through. So there again. I'm not going to debone my chicken breast because I want my bones. So I'm going to use a pair of scissors here that especially for sectioning chickens. And just going to cut down through the bone. I mean, it sounds a little bad, yes, but so there's my chicken open. This fat can go in the pot as well. I'm going to be skimming off the fat later on. This is all the real soft skin from the abdomen of the chicken. And then cut right along the rib cage close to the center of the backbone, because you've got over here you've got this chicken breast. You don't want to cut down through the chicken breast. So cut right down close to the backbone. And there's your nice whole chicken breast with the ribs still in there. Same thing on this side. Okay, and I can leave this flap of skin on there because I'm going to be, later on, I'm going to be taking the meat off the bones. This is the back section. That's pretty much all bone. There's maybe little bits of meat here and there, but I'm going to put that in there because, again, this is flavor. So as you can see, my stock is all melted in there now. That's not a lot of stock, but I don't want a lot of liquid. I don't want to cover my chicken completely with liquid. So now I'm going to start laying in my chicken pieces here. I'm going to put my bony pieces on the bottom and the chicken breast on top. Put the wings in there. The wings don't have much meat in them. You're not going to do much with them, but the bones will provide some flavor. Okay, so there are the bony pieces, the legs, the thighs, the wings. Here's my neck. And now I want to put my chicken breast on top. And the giblets, toss those in there. Let me rinse my hands. So my meat is in there. As you can see, maybe the liquid is covering the bony pieces, but it's not covering the chicken breast. Again, I don't want a lot of liquid in there. I'm going to put my lid on there, secure that in place, and then bring my heat up to medium, medium-high. And then I'm going to watch my pressure gauge here. This is my pressure gauge. When this comes up to full pressure, which it'll show 2 of those bar marks there, then that's full pressure on this pressure cooker. I'm going to move this to my small burner in the back, my simmer burner. I know what setting to use. I just want to maintain enough heat to keep the pressure up on this. And I'm going to cook the chicken for about 30 minutes and then turn the heat off and let this cool down naturally. It'll lose pressure naturally. I really need to cool that chicken down to the point at which it's easier to handle. I can handle it safely because I'm going to debone all that chicken and take the meat. So here is my chicken. This cooked for 30 minutes. I gave a good long time. I was doing other things and came back to the pot and saw that my pressure indicator was all the way down. So I know this is completely depressurized. There it is, my cooked chicken. I got to tell you, the aroma of this has just filled my home. It has just got this rich chickeny aroma because I cooked this chicken in homemade chicken stock rather than water. So this is going to be a delicious chicken. This has to cool down now. Then I'm going to discard the skin, discard the bones, and take all that meat off the bones and set it aside. And that's what I'm going to use for the chicken in my chicken and dumplings. So now we're back in present time. This is my stock that I made last night with the chicken. And I put this in the refrigerator overnight because I knew the chicken would rend some fat. And that's what that solid stuff is on the top. I'm going to skim all this off and discard it. Some people save the chicken fat for cooking. You can. I already have duck fat in the refrigerator. I think I even have goose fat in there. So I don't need to save this chicken fat rather. There is all my chicken meat from the chicken that I cooked last night. After it cooled down, I took it off the bones, discarded the bones and the skin, and then I broke up the chicken into some fairly good sized chunks. I don't want it small like you would use in chicken soup, but I am going to be eating my chicken and dumplings with a large tablespoon, so I do want some good sized chunks of meat. I am in the meantime heating a large pot on the stove. I want to put my chicken stock in there. That's a gel because that gelatin comes out of the bones and the gristle. That's how they used to make gelatin in the old days before we came up with nice unflavored gelatin. In fact, it was considered to be a status symbol to own gelatin molds. It meant you were rich enough to afford to buy meat and chicken and duck and goose from which you could make gelatin by rending the bones and the skin. Okay, and then I'm going to put my chicken meat in there, except chicken meat is cold, so I need to warm it up with the stock. And what I want to do is I want to heat this up to melt that stock and bring it up to it just barely comes to the boil. Then I'm going to control my heat because I want this to barely simmer. Next, I need to whisk together my wet ingredients. So there's my egg. I'm just going to break that up a little bit, like so. I'm only going to use half of my buttermilk right now, roughly half, because I'm not sure how much liquid to dry the proportion should be to get what my mother used for her dumplings. I did melt my butter in the microwave because I want to just whisk that in, kind of break that up really well. Okay, so those are my wet ingredients. Next I'm going to do my dry. So now I'm going to put my flour in a large bowl with my salt. Get it all in there. And my baking soda. And then whisk that together to blend it well. And then I want to add my wet ingredients to this. But before I add my wet ingredients, I want to just grate a little bit of pepper in there, not much, just a tiny bit. As I said, pepper seems to overwhelm the flavor of chicken a little bit. All right, I don't need this now. I do need this. Then I'm going to pour my wet ingredients in there. And I want to bring this together just until it's blended without overworking it. And that's telling me I'm not going to need any more of that buttermilk. All right, that's good right there. So there's my liquid just coming up to the boil. I'm going to use an ice cream scoop and put about 5 or 6 of these dollops of dough on the liquid. I'm going to get 5 large ones, and it looks like I'm going to get 1 small one that I'm just going to drop in the center. I'm going to use up all of my stuff here. That's the little one for the baby. Okay, I'm going to reduce my heat down to low, put my lid on, and then boil these for about 10 minutes. This went for 10 minutes. I just turned my heat off. I want to see what this looks like. Remove this carefully so I don't fog my camera lens. And there they are, dumplings. I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to move my dumplings carefully to a bowl. And then I made a little slurry of flour and water. I'm going to turn my heat back up. Of flour and water that I'm going to use to thicken my liquid a little bit. I don't want a thick gravy, but I want to have a little bit of body to it. Just a little bit. And you want to cook this for 3 or 4 minutes just to cook that flour so that you get rid of that raw flour flavor. So now to plate this, I would take some of my chicken and put it on my bowl, in my bowl, and then take one of my dumplings, set it on the side, and then just take a little bit more of my broth here and put it over my dumplings. So there it is, chicken and dumplings. I'm hoping that's like my mom's. The last step is to see how good that tastes. So there is my chicken and dumplings. I did salt that liquid, by the way. I tasted it for salt, and it did need a little bit. Here's my chicken and my liquid. Yeah, see, that's perfect. Just enough salt. And then a bit of my dumpling here. My mom used just milk or water in her dumplings. I think buttermilk is perfect for dumplings. Oh. See, this is comfort food. It could be raining outside. You might not be feeling well. Make some chicken and dumplings, and the aroma and the flavor just wraps its arms around you and says, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. That's how I feel right now. So excuse me, I'm gonna go enjoy my chicken and dumplings.
For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, Visit the White Trash Cooking website and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.